Fame makes a man take things over.
Welcome to Close Listening. I'm Zach Morgenstern, joined as always by silent co-host Ludwig von B. January 21st, 2021, a historic day in my personal history in that I started on YouTube. Now, if you click on my channel, that probably won't be listed as an anniversary or anything because I created that channel years ago to upload music videos and whatnot, but I only really became a YouTuber last January 21st. And the decision to do that was severalfold. Prior to that, I had been in the habit of doing written reviews when I wanted to write things about media. I've maintained a movie review blog for a while, but my then fiance, now wife, Infinite Text, Andrea, she's had this wonderful YouTube channel for several years where she talks about the books she loves, and she's built up a real community around that. So there was always this idea in the back of my head that I should maybe do the same thing with music. The way she holds up books and talks about them, I could hold up records and CDs and cassettes. At the same time, 2020 being, the first year that we were all locked down and sent home, not to make good of a bad situation, but it happened to be a really productive year for my recording of my own music. I put out 2 albums that year, Bonapartes and Broken Hearts and Rainbow Days, both products which I was very happy with compared to anything I'd ever recorded before. So I was also just trying to think of strategies of how could I be someone out there in the musical world. Finally, I was listening to this book by David Hepworth called The Rise and Fall of the Rock Stars. And it made reference to this George Michael album called Listen Without Prejudice. And this album echoed with ambition because the idea behind it was that George Michael already had all this fame as a pop star, and he was trying to put out this album where he wants people to listen to it, not for the brand of George Michael, but for him. And I wanted to listen to that album, and I thought, wouldn't it be fun to do commentary on that? And with that idea for a first video, and with several reasons to want to go onto this platform, I was inspired to get started. But now that I've gotten to the end of that first year, I think it's time to be reflective. YouTube in some ways has given me things to be excited about, but it's also given me many things for keeping my mind in check. And I want to talk about those things today with a list of sort of overlapping lessons about what it has meant to be a committed video creator on this platform for the last year. So lesson number 1, YouTube creates an allure of fame.
Lessons hard to swallow. Fame.
So social media almost plays this trick on us, and it's not a con per se, though in some contexts it can be. Whereas it used to be you had to be discovered to put your art out there. You couldn't just publish your songs. You had to have a record company publish them for you and sell them. Now you can self-publish your music. Now you can self-publish your art on Instagram. Now you can write fan fiction online and sell ebooks and maybe even physical books, depending on your resources. But just because you have that platform, it doesn't mean you're magically going to be discovered. But even for someone like me who can think critically, who knows that you're not just going to be lucky, the fact that you're given that one leg up, that you have this chance to self-publish, the fact that you're confident in your own material can lead you to, at moments, almost forget that there's so many people producing material on these platforms, that just because you can self-publish, you don't have any advantage over the previous generations. If anything, you might be at a disadvantage because there's more of a swamp of material out there. The second lesson is that you aren't going to find a trick or a gimmick to overcome this. So I remember reading about David Bowie as amongst celebrities, particularly driven to become a celebrity, particularly driven to become famous before he was. And so he couldn't just write good songs. He had to develop an identity, write songs with a hook. And so he became, amongst other things, the songwriter who wrote songs about outer space. First big hit being Space Oddity, the unforgettable ground control to Major Tom. So I've occasionally had these moments in my songwriting career where I think, okay, Zach, you write these kind of eccentric songs or these songs that are good but unmemorable. All you got to do to become famous is make them memorable in some way, have some sort of marketing gimmick. And again, because you're taking that one step up, it is easy to forget that that one step is still only one step in a huge world where only a tiny percent of people really get to have a lot of their material heard. So at the time, I've been playing various Pokemon games over the last few years. I played Pokemon Emerald in 2020, Pokemon Diamond at the beginning of 2021. I've been watching a lot of Pokemon YouTubers, like Manjay TV and others. So I thought, what is it that people born in the 90s will always be nostalgic for? Pokemon. So what if I write this Bruce Springsteen epic rocker about a viral Pokemon topic, namely the idea that, at least in the English dub, Ash promised his Pidgeot he would come back for it and never did. I made a music video called Forever Pidgeotto, and I thought this is such a good concept. 90s kids are gonna love it. Surely the algorithm will pick it up more than my less commercial stuff. No, I mean, it's not my least viewed video, but half a year later, it hasn't cracked even 100 views. It can be tempting to think I'm gonna do something more commercial. Well, guess what? There's a lot of people doing stuff more commercial, and I know it's gonna seem obvious to some of you, but it's one of those hard lessons. Even if you knew it on some level, you have to relearn. And I had to relearn it twice. I made another Pokemon video, this one completely divorced from my music content, where I did a response to the popular YouTube channel, the Super Carlin Brothers. And again, I thought, Super Carlin Brothers, viral, people want to click on their stuff. Pokemon, viral, people want to click on this stuff. I'll create a fun thumbnail responding to this. Algorithm didn't pick it up at all. And my third lesson, and another thing about not finding a miracle to hack the algorithm, is the algorithm does not pick up on sequels, or at least not necessarily. So my most viewed video is sadly my most disliked video, and I'm going to get into that in a second, but it's a review of Pink Floyd's Animals. And basically, because it wasn't an all positive review, and I used a bit of a clickbaity title, I got the ire of a lot of Pink Floyd fans, and I got a lot of negative responses to it. So a month later, I'm listening to Pink Floyd's The Wall, and I realized, well, I actually really like this album. What if I, after being demonized as this enemy of Pink Floyd, I make another video or say, hey, I found a Pink Floyd album that I really enjoy. Surely these 3,000 people who all dislike my video will come around to me. And I think I was projecting because, at least in my head, and I think a lot of other people did this too, with every song that Rebecca Black has done since she was given a hard time online for her childhood debut video, A Friday, everyone has said, oh, she's actually a pretty good pop singer. Every song she releases is her comeback. And it almost helps that she was given a hard time at the beginning, because people say, hey, that person you thought was a very terrible singer? Actually, she's pretty good. And now let's go and support her going forward. So I sort of figured, okay, the Pink Floyd fans all hate me. Now they're going to come around and love me. But no, the algorithm did not give me liking a Pink Floyd album video recommendations to the people who watched my previous Pink Floyd video. It didn't register with them at all. My reaction to the Wall video has about 40 views compared to the 3,000. It's like they weren't created by the same creator. They weren't promoted on the same platform. I have no idea how the mysteries of the algorithm work, but I thought that by making this sequel, by having this redemption arc in the eyes of Pink Floyd fans, it would be a brilliant idea. And no, it didn't pay off. Now, sort of moving on to another topic from the futile search for fame, but drawing on this Pink Floyd video, is my fourth lesson, that comment sections are full of critics. So I posted this video, and I called it Pink Floyd Skeptic Reacts to Animals. And basically my position on Pink Floyd throughout the years is I don't understand why they're treated as this super mainstream rock group, as mainstream as the Beatles and Elvis and Bob Dylan, because so much of their music is slow and instrumental, and there's music out there for people who like that stuff, but it's called classical music and jazz music, and it's not generally marketed to the same audience. So I just don't understand this idea that, yeah, man, I love to rock to these really catchy Beatles tunes and these really catchy Stones tunes and these super weird, basically modern classical Pink Floyd tunes. Like, that's just a disjunct for me. So I've never gotten the appeal of Pink Floyd. So I made this video called Pink Floyd Skeptic Reacts to Animals, because a friend had recently told me I should listen to that album, and I reacted to it, and I tried to appreciate some things about it. I said some nice things about it, but ultimately I still had the same view that the instrumental parts were way too long. They were too repetitive to have appeal to me after a while. And I just don't get why that album and a lot of Pink Floyd is treated as mainstream rock. So in my head, the reaction I might get to that video is either nothing, or maybe someone saying, ah, too bad, I really like this album, or someone saying, but you have to appreciate the writing in this particular song. But that's not what I got at all. What I got, was a lot of people being very angry about kids these days not knowing what true music is, which is bizarre because I'm someone who's never listened to the music of my era. I'm putting myself out as this hippie guy with like 1960s hair who loves 60s and 70s music. I just wasn't completely enamored with this one band. And I also thought, the 60s and 70s was this time of peace and love. So it was like, your thing, man, it's cool if you don't like this. But on both my Pink Floyd video and to a lesser extent on my Nick Drake Pink Moon video, I got these comments from people very angrily saying that I had no idea what I was talking about. And what was extra frustrating about this is it felt like there was a formula for these comments where people would say, I'm an idiot, my interpretations were stupid, but rarely did they provide a more interesting interpretation or any interpretation at all. They really got off on saying, this guy is so dumb, his interpretation doesn't make sense. And I guess one last reason that really confused me is I feel like anyone who's been in an English class who's interpreted poetry or prose knows there's no one correct interpretation of these things. Like Pink Floyd writes these very abstract lyrics, and yet I had all these commenters telling me that because I didn't have the most mainstream interpretation of Roger Waters' lyrics and Animals, that my interpretation was wrong. Like, that's just not how poetry interpretation works. But I guess the thing is, if you are a YouTube comment creator and you go into certain realms, those are the kinds of comments you are going to. Lesson 5, which was almost harder for me than the passionate criticism I got on my Pink Floyd video, is that some people are dispassionately negative. So when I put up that first video review on George Michael, what surprised me is even though I ended up getting more likes than dislikes, right away I got several dislikes. And this confused me because I guess I, as a person, just don't dislike things very often. Like if I see something that I find politically odious and I desperately, want to suppress the message, like it's Donald Trump or Ben Shapiro saying something horrible, then I might dislike it. I mean, I can also see an argument if a video is like how to do this technology thing and they get it wrong, disliking it. But the idea that you're just like, I vaguely dislike this thing and it doesn't really matter, so I'm just going to ruin this creator's day and create dislike, like, it's just not something I would do. So I'm strong. I understand I was going on a platform with likes and dislikes, but it just felt really weird that people would do that, especially in a day of, heightened political correctness where people are trying to come up with all these ways of not being mean. But I guess if your meanness doesn't fall into some politically meaningful category, if it's just dispassionate internet meanness, I mean, that's just as in vogue as ever. So with my next listen now, I want to be a bit self-reflective, again, back on the topic of fame. So, on the one hand, I can be unhappy that I didn't have all this affirmation coming from YouTube videos to my new up-and-coming channel. But then again, it wasn't like I was watching a ton of small channels. And this wasn't intentional. Like, part of my principle was always, I'm going to support similar content creators. The problem is, I always had this long to watch list of videos. And, YouTube is not like a library. You don't go in and be like, I'm going to look for a particular book. No, YouTube flashes things in your face. They tell you, you got to watch this, you got to watch this. And you get so tempted. And quickly I pile up a list of people I want to watch. And the problem is, of course, the algorithm only recommends people who are already popular and already huge, who you can't build a community with because, well, they're big channels. They, they don't have the time to build community with every little people out there. So, I'll get recommendations for channels like Wings of Pegasus or Rick Beato and the Professor of Rock. And so I'm watching all these huge music tubers, but it's not like my wife who's on BookTube, where there seems to be a better hashtag community where small booktubers support small booktubers and become medium booktubers. It feels like with MusicTube, there's this really heavy emphasis on these giant channels. And when I started doing my Beatles reaction videos, I got recommended to these two other channels that were doing Beatles album by album reactions, Call Me Carolyn and Crystal Shannon. But again, the algorithm wasn't thinking, okay, maybe recommend him channels that could viably be his peers. No, these were channels that already had tens of thousands of subscribers, getting massive amounts of comments and likes on their video. And there's this illusion that you can go on YouTube and be part of a community, but you really have to make that your goal. And if I'm going to continue working on this channel going forward, that's what I'm going to do. And that's my lesson 7. When I started thinking about this problem, writing the script, I did come across this one tool called YouTube Crawler, where it's a search engine where amongst the things you could filter for is numbers of subscribers. So I did go through that briefly, and I tried to follow some other channels that I thought had similar content that were also like new channels, like 0 to 100 subscribers. Now, unfortunately, the YouTube crawler isn't a great filter, so the people I was seeing, they didn't really seem to be creating similar content to me, but I'm going to keep pursuing roads like that. And then my final lesson from spending a year on YouTube is that YouTube can create compulsion problems. So with my very first video with that reaction to George Michael's Listen Without Prejudice, I decided the main thing I should do is like listen seriously to every track, comment on the artistry of all of them. And I picked up this formula for my videos where I basically reacted track by track. I put up the name of each track on my screen, and I wanted to be consistent. I wanted to act like I was an already famous established channel, even though I could totally change my formula at any point because most of my videos had so few views. And what I'm realizing now and why I'm going to try and change the format of my videos going forward is that I was sticking to this formula that wasn't always interesting because it was making a lot of my videos too long. Ideally, I think lots of these videos should be less than 10 minutes, and they all end up being way more than 10 minutes. There are a lot of songs on a lot of albums where, because the lyrics aren't that deep and I don't know, there's not something way out there with the music, and also I'm not a music theory person, where I have nothing analytical to say, but my formula has been react to all these songs. And then on top of that, I'm the kind of person who, when I get an idea, I get distracted until I get to complete that idea. So I'll go to the library, I'll take out piles of CDs. They all look interesting to me. I want to make reactions to them all. I have to do that all before they're due back at the library. I don't like the idea of listening to an album and only listening to a few tracks at a time. So I have to find a time where I can sit and listen to the whole album and take proper notes so I can do this track by track reaction thing. So this is not going to be a problem for everyone, but lots of people, I'm sure I'm not alone in this, create these to-do lists for themselves that feel like compulsions. They feel like your job, like your basic responsibilities, like things you have to do, even though you really don't. And if I'm going to continue on this platform, that's something I'm going to have to overcome. So in conclusion, it felt like I named a lot of negatives in my first year on YouTube. And I think it's important to be honest about this stuff, that when you're creating material for an audience, of course, part of your drive is this vision that you have a real audience, that you're building towards some kind of fame. I've never been drawn to the idea of celebrity, but being a singer-songwriter, I do like the idea of my music mattering. The way I put it the other day is I don't necessarily want to be the Beatles, but I want one of my albums to be Abbey Road or Sgt. Pepper's. I want it, I guess, to be a poster someone has on their walls, not for my ego, but just because I care about the art that much. And if you're going to be on this platform, you have to find a psychological way that, though you're going to have that drive, you have to know at the same time it's unrealistic, and find a way to be happy despite having this drive that you can't really manifest. And despite everything I said, I don't think I'm the worst at that. I think the worst that happens is there are days where I keep refreshing my YouTube page because I can't believe how few views a video has, and then I get mildly frustrated, and then I move on. And I'm just going to keep improving on that attitude in the coming year. And I finally cleared all the videos I wanted to watch that I had saved on my phone. Still have a few on my computer, but I also want to get better at watching these smaller channels. No disrespect again to Rick Beato or Phil from Wings and Pegasus or Professor of Rock, but they have their views, and I want to find who else is out there in the upcoming year, and I'm looking forward to doing that. My name is Zach Morgenstern. This is Ludwig von B. See you next time.